Hello everyone, here's a brief non-dog intro. I've seen so much desperation both about the US elections and about the Austrian elections, so I thought I'd chime in a little bit because this is a political and social podcast as well. If you're not happy with your government, no matter where in the world you are, if you're not happy with how your tax dollars are spent, or if you disagree with the treatment of marginalized groups by your government, don't throw your hands up in despair and do a little more than just socially signaling that you're sad or disappointed. There are concrete ways to make your small contribution count. Here's just a few of them. Support small businesses owned by marginalized communities or individuals. Seek out Black, queer, or immigrant providers of goods and services. If you're white and Google, your first hits will be white businesses. Make an effort to keep looking for non-white ones. When doing research on YouTube, click on videos made by non-white, non-cis people despite the fact that the algorithm will push white cis male content on you if you're white and cis and male yourself. Over time, you can train the algorithm to be a little less racist, xenophobic, misogynist, and transphobic. If you disagree with your government's tax dollar spending, give them less tax dollars to spend. Support what we call trabajo autogestivo in the Spanish-speaking world. Self-organized or community-organized work in the informal economy that exists outside the taxed formalized system, but is just as good and often better than what we'll get from big companies. Folks doing trabajo autogestivo will often prefer trueques, or exchange of time, goods, or services over the exchange of money. Just here in Mexico City, I know designers, tattoo artists, bakers, caterers, bicycle messengers, a moving company, pop-up cinemas, and various cultural, art, and community spaces who work in this way. Locally, I work as a dog trainer in the same way, whenever I get the opportunity. So wherever you are, even if your city is smaller than mine, I know you'll be able to find similar initiatives if you look for them. One way to start is a simple Google search. You'll be surprised how much comes up this way. Finally, participate in city council meetings and make your ideas and concerns known. A lot of politics that actually impacts your community on a direct level doesn't happen nationally but locally. And this is also the place where you're most likely to be heard. Hello everyone again. Now let's dive into the actual podcast. I thought I'd do a dog training question today. This one comes from Veronica and the amazing Fee, and it's such a good question I wanted to record an episode. Veronica asked me to talk about the mechanics of using a release to distractions as a reinforcer in dog training. She added, I often release Fee to sniffing where a dog passed by as a reward for staying with me while they pass and not saying hello. We can think of this in two broad categories. One, releasing the dog to a distraction as a reinforcer for ignoring that very same distraction. For example, a leave it or recalling away from that same distraction and then releasing to that same distraction. Listening to us turns out not to be a detour, but the fastest way to get what the dog really wants in a particular situation. An example of category 1, advanced, would be to ask for an entire obedience routine before releasing the dog to what they actually want. 2, releasing the dog to a distraction or the environment as a reinforcer for behaviors that are not related to that very distraction. Veronica's example of releasing the dog to sniff as a reward for not greeting a stranger is a good example here. We're releasing the dog to distraction B as a reinforcer for not accessing distraction A. An even clearer example would be releasing the dog to an unrelatedly tempting street corner sniff in order to reinforce ignoring a dog. I'll take you through both of the above, and we'll mostly talk about the first one. Releasing the dog to the distraction the dog most wants in the environment they are in, as a reinforcer for doing what we like them to do first. I'll focus on part 1, something brief, such as a leave it or a recall, because that's a necessary step for getting to the advanced version of it, longer stretches of work. This is how I usually use the environment as a reinforcer and, at the same time, sharpen my recall cues and leave it cues. It's only a distraction if my dog wants it, so the recall or leave it will be difficult. And because the dog wants that distraction, the distraction itself can become the strongest reinforcer I have available to me. If we only use positive reinforcement and management in training, this is, I believe, the only way to get recalls away from distraction we cannot trump with other classical reinforcers like food or toys. An example from my dogs would be chasing animals. I can recall both my dogs away from any animal they would like to chase or are already chasing because they know there's a good chance I will release them to chase again. The reason this has worked so well is, I believe, that all of my dogs prefer the same element of the predatory sequence. The chase is their favorite part. It is not stalking, grabbing, killing, or consuming. It is running towards the prey animal. I'll share 2 videos in the show notes. One of Game recalling away from a squirrel in order to run towards the squirrel again, several times in a row, and the other one of Chai recalling away from a cat in order to run towards the cat again. My interpretation of why this works is, in Chai's case, that Chai loves running towards cats. However, she's not brave enough to grab or kill a cat. If a cat hisses at her, she won't know what to do and will get unsure of herself. She's even been chased down the sidewalk by a very bold cat the other month. But Chai loves that run towards the prey animal, whether the animal is retreating or being still. So I can call Chai away from a cat, then send her back, then call her again before she gets there, then send her back on, and so on. The reason she responds so fast is that coming back to me is the only way to restart the chase. If she caught up with the cat or got all the way to the cat, she would then have to face that cat or get his dead. That's not what Chai wants. By means of coming back, she gets the opportunity to chase, or in the video example to run towards, the cat over and over and over again. This is more fun than only getting to run there once and then having to deal with a prey animal the size of a cat up close. I assume what Chai has learned is that amazing euphoria of running towards prey animals can be repeated by returning to me. We've played this game so much that if I don't call her, she will voluntarily return on many occasions. Game is a little bit different. She is braver in the sense that she will bite prey animals. However, her kill bite is not particularly well developed. She will bite and injure a prey animal, but then won't know how to proceed and lose interest. In her case, maybe the reason it is easy to call her off while chasing is, as Robert Sapolsky explains really well, that the biggest dopamine hit happens in anticipation of the reinforcer, not when getting the reinforcer. If biting is equivalent to getting the reinforcer and then the fun ends, chasing would be the phase in which Game anticipates it, so her dopamine release would spike during the chase. Note that I'm speculating here. I'm a layperson and can't measure Game's dopamine levels during the different links in the predatory sequence. Or she may also prefer the chasing over the bite phase, but not mind the bite link of the behavior chain as much as Chai. I know Game will bite animals because she has done it when encountering prey animals at liberty without me telling her not to. Chai has only done this once with a rat. That's our scenario 1. I've trained different dogs in this way. However, here's a big caveat. None of the dogs I taught this to so far has been a dog who would kill and consume prey animals. I haven't had this opportunity, so I cannot say whether they would have learned or whether my training protocol for chasing as a reinforcer only works for dogs whose aim is not to kill. The only dogs who would kill and sometimes consume are the field line pointers I grew up with, specifically German and Czech wire-haired pointers. They were trained by my dad and not by me. My dachshund, my first quote-unquote own dog, would kill as well, and so would my dad's best friends, Jagd Terriers and German Spaniels. They were gritty working dogs working in the field. I'm sure one day I will get the opportunity to try my protocol with a dog like this and find an answer to my question whether it would work for them too. As for now, I don't know. What I'm pretty sure would work is using killing and potentially permission to consume as a reinforcer. There would only be a single reinforcer because you can only kill the same, say, deer once, while you can chase it many times, but I am convinced that if I set my training sessions up smart, I could teach this. Of course, I'm not going to teach it because I don't want my dogs to kill random wildlife in training. I like wildlife. But in theory, it would absolutely work. Back to my protocol, the one where we don't kill or traumatize anyone. The way I teach ignoring or recalling away from prey animals has several steps. First, I place all prey animals into one bucket and name that reinforcement bucket. This bucket will be my marker cue that functions as a release to chase. In the example videos, my marker cue that marks the behavior I asked for and releases the dog to chase is birds. I use birds for all critters. I will then start on a long line, at a big distance when my dog has only just noticed a prey animal. I usually start with birds because they will fly off and be gone fast, even if my dog doesn't come back. I will call my dog, and after they take a few steps in my direction, cue birds, drop the long line, and run towards the bird together with them. I'll praise them for chasing. Anytime we encounter squirrels, we'll practice in the same way, on a long line. The long line serves the purpose that if my dog doesn't come back right away, they can't help themselves to the reinforcer. I will stop them. Then they can stare at the prey animal for as long as they want. At the end of the leash, only once they reorient in my direction will I mark with birds and then let them chase. That's the same way I taught my Border Collie Mick to recall off of sheep. A follow-up question is, how do I make sure my dog comes all the way back to me before releasing them to the reinforcer? That's an excellent question. We need to systematically build up to this. In the beginning of training, I don't require them to come all the way back. I may just take reorienting towards me or flicking an ear in my direction. Think of it as shaping. I will mark the moment they give me the tiniest bit of attention with my bird's cue and then grow the tiny amount of attention over time until I get to the advanced stage of the first way we can use the environment as a reinforcer. Once I reliably get a few steps in my direction, I'll start delaying my release cue. In my critter example, this cue is birds, until the dog comes further and further back to me. If they release themselves before I say birds, I'll once again use the long line to stop them. Over the course of various sessions, it depends on the dog how many it takes, they learn that the fastest way to get what they want is to do what I want first. Once I'm at that stage, I can recall them all the way, and then I can start adding in other little behaviors before the release. I can ask them to eat a treat from my hand, chase the treat, touch my hand, sit, and so on. Over the course of various sessions, I'll work up all the way to a point where my dog can practice several obedience behaviors in a row before getting released to chase. Obedience skills is the only thing I've done with this personally as a way to get classical reinforcers off my body. But you could use any other behavior as well. The stronger your dogs believe that in the end they will get to chase that critter, the longer you can work with them before the release. I usually work up to this point with all dogs because it allows me to grow the space between recall and release long enough to give me time to leash my dog if I have to. So I could call, sit, leash, unleash, release. Or I could call, heel, sit, release. Or I could simply call to a hand touch, or call to a scatter and then release. The dog eating the scatter would also give me time to leash the dog if necessary, and eating a boring scatter in the face of a tempting distraction is just another learned behavior. Briefly leaving a particular distraction in order to get access to it is the first step that can then be built and expanded to the second step, where we can actually work in the presence of lots of distractions. In my example, these are critters. It could also be food. You could teach your dog to heel past and then directly over lots of treats on the floor for an opportunity to be released to vacuum them out after your routine, for example. If your dog doesn't chase critters but eats everything they can find, you can teach them to work in an environment full of foods in order to earn permission to eat all the food. The teaching process would be the same, starting with a simple leave it or recalls on a long line. As long as your management is flawless during the training process, that is, as long as you protect the distraction until you release your dog, dogs are going to learn this. It needs to be flawless though. Otherwise, you're putting going for the food in spite of your recall or leave it on an intermittent reinforcement schedule, which means your dog, like any good gambler, will continue trying to self-release. Now, let's look at scenario 2, releasing your dog to distraction B after they successfully ignored distraction A. I see this as slightly different from my first two examples. In the first two examples, the reinforcer is a functional reward. The dog gets the very reinforcer they most want in that situation. If they want the critter and their reward is the critter, that's a functional reinforcer. If they want to say hi to a dog, distraction A, and then get released to sniff a delicious smelling corner, distraction B, this is not a functional reinforcer if they wanted to say hi to the dog more than they wanted to sniff the corner. This is much closer to what we constantly do in training when we use food rewards. It's like giving your dog reinforcer B a treat when they successfully ignore distraction A, another dog. Depending on how much your dog values treats, sniffing or saying hi to other dogs, your reinforcer may end up being a consolation prize more than anything else. Or your dog may spit out the treat or not even sniff the corner because that's not what they want in this situation. All they want is say hi to the dog. On the other hand, if sniffing or eating treats is equal or higher value as saying hi to the dog, it will be a reinforcer. Functional means that the dog gets what the dog wants, not what you want. In my experience, if you want to stay within a positive reinforcement and management training paradigm, in order to get truly reliable behaviors around reinforcers, you cannot trump with a reinforcer coming from you. You need to use functional reinforcers. You need to use the distraction as the reinforcer, whether that's chasing a critter, eating food on the floor, or saying hi to other dogs. I haven't run or read a study on this, so this is anecdotal. If you cannot trump these distractions and want to only use positive reinforcement but not functional reinforcement, aka access to the distraction and management, I believe it is not possible to get reliability around distractions that are higher value than what you have. For example, reeling the dog in on a long line when they are straining to say hi to a dog and then spraying cheese into their mouth until they eat it will not teach them to not say hi to other dogs unless they like cheese more than other dogs. They may end up learning to return to you when on a long line, but the moment you take off that line, they will go say hi to the dog because you can't control them anymore. They are now free to make their own choice, and the choice they will make is their preferred one. If you're willing to use all four quadrants, which include negative reinforcement and positive punishment when the dog does not do what you want, you don't need functional reinforcers, and you never need to release your dog to the distraction in order to get reliable results. This is a question of your personal training values. Both approaches can be implemented kindly and professionally and without unduly stressing your learner. You just need to know what you're doing. That goes for all training. Veronica asked an excellent follow-up question here. How often do I, in practice, release my dog to a distraction? Do I always have to use the functional reinforcer if I want to stay within positive reinforcement and management? The answer is no, that's not realistic. I use the functional reinforcer anytime I have an opportunity. Anytime I'm about to meet a dog friend, anytime it is safe for the critter and my dog to chase, anytime it is safe for my dog to eat food on the street. I actively look for these opportunities. For example, see a taco on the street, recall my dog, release them to eat the taco. See a squirrel in the park, ask for a sit, release my dog. I may even tilt the percentage in my favor by releasing them to the reinforcer more than once. People in my neighborhood will sometimes put out cat kibble for free-roaming cats. When my dog finds a pile, I may recall them once before they get there and then release them to eat. After a few bites, I may recall them out of eating and immediately release again, and so on. So I might get 5 recalls followed by releases and then let them finish the kibble. By using all these opportunities in everyday life and looking out for them all the time, I am able to not release my dog when it isn't convenient or safe. For example, when a cat is on the other side of a busy street. I can ask my dog to leave it, and they will. I don't need to reinforce them at all in this situation because my treat isn't what they want here anyways. We'll just keep walking, they'll keep hoping I'll release them to go back to the critter, I won't, and then we'll be around the next corner and there will be another interesting smell. No big deal at all. Same with a nasty trash bag or a puddle of vomit I don't want them to eat. Because they're allowed to eat so much street food, it is easy for me to tell them not to eat the sketchy looking stuff. I suspect my intermittent reinforcement schedule varies between 25 and 75% reinforcement depending on the kinds of environment we frequent and equals out around 50%. Let me also add that different dogs respond differently to this protocol. The less biddable and the more independent your dog, the harder it will be to teach them in this way. The more skilled your setups need to be and the longer it will take. The more independent and less biddable your dog, the faster you would get to your goal by considering negative reinforcement and positive punishment in addition to positive reinforcement and management. You don't have to, of course, but if you know how to, it will speed up your process a lot. I hope this answers all your questions. If there are more, feel free to reach out via email. I'll also open one more private spot in January. If you'd like longer-term support teaching this concept to your own dog, now's the time to get a head start on the waitlist. If you're up for experimenting and have a dog who wants to kill prey animals, I'd be extra curious to see if we can get my positive reinforcement/management protocol to work without allowing a kill. Finally, some housekeeping announcements here. I've added a new section to my website. Apart from adventuredogsAnarchy.com/free stuff, where you can find almost everything I put together before 2022, own the rights to, and have not lost when my external hard drive died, I also added a section with paid content. I hate paid content, but I do need to survive in this sadly capitalist world, and I'm trying to fill my days with as much not-for-money work as possible. Getting one of my paid ebooks or webinars is one small way to support me in this endeavor. You'll find my current library at adventuredogsAnarchy.com/capitalism. Finally, if you get value from this podcast and would like to support it, share it with a friend or in a Facebook group. Leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. These are the most valuable contribution you can make, more so than money. Or consider a small monthly or one-time donation via adventuredogsanarchy.com/support.